Interviews in the 2nd District congressional race. GOP candidate John Howe, a former state senator, will tell us why he wants to represent the district John Klein has represented for many years. We're back in 2 minutes. Minnesota's 2nd congressional district race will likely be one of the highest profile and most expensive races in the U.S. this election season. Over the next few weeks, we'll be featuring candidate conversations with some of the top contenders in that race. First up, Republican John Howe.
You know, we're at a critical juncture in our country, and it's going to be important on who you send there. You need to send somebody that's got common sense.
John Howe is a former state senator and also served as the mayor of Red Wing from 2008 to 2010, and he is joining us in studio today to talk a little bit about his candidacy, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, John, you've been a state senator. You were the mayor of Red Wing. What is it that drives you to run to be a member of Congress?
Well, obviously, Tom, I want to bring some common sense to Washington. It's dearly needed. But my main issue is our U.S. debt. We are $19 trillion in debt right now. You've just seen the last budget deal. They added about $900 billion to our debt. The experts say once we get to about $23-25 trillion in debt, we're not going to be able to service our interest on our debt. And you know what happens to a business when they can't service their interest? They go under. We've seen what happened over in Greece. Now, when President Obama took over, we were a little over $10 trillion in debt. The debt has increased 77% under his watch, and now we're at $18.8 trillion in debt.
Over a several-year period, the debt had been going down a little bit on an annual basis, but you're right, it has taken a leap once again. There is a larger problem, a systemic problem. Part of the reason for the debt going back up again was due to some tax breaks. So the tax structure also needs to be reworked, I imagine?
Absolutely. You know, our corporate tax structure definitely needs to be, Tom, our highest corporate tax rate is 39.1%. And what happens is that the corporations do tax inversions. They buy businesses overseas so they don't have to pay U.S. taxes. The other thing that happens is we've got over $2 trillion of corporate profits. Corporations don't need to pay taxes on their profits. One of the loopholes is if they earn it overseas until they bring that money back home. So what happens, you've got $2 trillion sitting on the sideline. Well, that money's not going to be invested in the United States. That money's going to be built, used for building manufacturing plants outside of the U.S. So what we need to do is we have such a high sticker rate and we have a low effective rate. I think our effective rate is probably around 12.6%. So what we should do is have like a flat corporate tax rate somewhere between 13% and 15%, and that would prevent a lot of these tax inversions and bring some of that money home so we can invest it here.
And that's as it pertains to corporate taxes. You have also made a proposal that I'm sure would be of interest to a lot of people, one way or another, getting rid of the income tax and going to more of a consumption tax, whether that be a national sales tax, value-added tax. What do you have in mind?
Well, I'll tell you, we have it just about exactly backwards. We should encourage earnings, savings, and investings, and we should tax consumption. And, I just came back from Florida. I met with over 300 business owners and people who have retired to Florida. Florida has no state income tax. One of the things that one of my opponents has criticized me on is that I looked at expanding the consumption tax. Well, when I was senator, and we had, I wanted to lower the overall tax rate to 4.9%. Right now it's 6.875, but when you figure in local option sales tax, you're probably more at 7.22%. But if you lowered that to 4.9%, spread it over everything, and then eliminate the state income tax, we'd be in a much better spot. You wouldn't have people leaving our state. The other thing a consumption tax does is it gives you a much more stable tax. Instead of having this high rise when the economy is good and we fall out in these deficits when the economy is bad, a consumption tax is much more stable.
Now, what about the argument that it might unfairly impact senior citizens who are beyond their peak earning years and now they're mostly on the consumption end of things? Would they be paying more in taxes?
I don't think they'd be paying more in taxes because you're eliminating the state income tax. But we need to stabilize our tax system, and certainly there's a fair tax plan out there. There's ways you can take care of that for people that are in the low income bracket.
So in Congress you would look to get rid of the federal income tax and then as well as the state income tax?
Absolutely. One of the things we have a
Can the federal government make states get rid of their
No, they can't, and they shouldn't. That's the problem. One of the problems we have is the federal government's way too involved in state issues. But what we need to do is we just need to level it off and have it much more stable, and we can do that.
So it sounds to me, if you were elected to Congress, certainly serving on a budget committee or a tax committee is something that would be of interest to you.
One of the things that I was fortunate enough to be in the Senate. I served on the tax committee. And we have 48 rate classifications for property taxes in the state of Minnesota. We're the second highest rate classification. We need to collapse that. One of the things I was going to point out about the federal issue is we have a 77,000-page IRS code. You know, you and I can't figure out that. Corporations hire people to do nothing but find the loopholes in that. We need to collapse that and make it much more simpler.
On another issue, immigration, certainly a big issue in the presidential race. There's about 11 million people in this country right now illegally. What do you think should be done with those people? Should they get a pathway to citizenship, or should they be deported and get back in line?
Certainly, we shouldn't reward people for getting here illegally. You know, obviously, we have a big issue. We need to secure our borders. That's number one issue we need to do. You've heard a lot about the presidential people talking about that. We need to know, absolutely know who's coming into our country. But we can't reward people for breaking the law. Now, we have to set the procedure in place, and certainly there should be civil penalties for people that are here working and not paying the appropriate taxes and didn't follow the rules to get here.
Now, on the issue of the Affordable Care Act, a lot of the presidential candidates on the Republican side are still talking about the first thing they do is begin to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Is that something you would vote in favor of? And if so, what would be the alternative?
Well, what we need is competition, and unfortunately, you know, I live in Red Wing, and in Goodhue County, we have one choice. You know, we have a very good health system down there, but one choice. I think our premiums there are the highest in the state, and we've had the highest increases in the state. You go just across the border, you know, the county border into Dakota County, you've got several more choices. So this, you know, one size fits all does not work. And, you know, I own several Sears stores, and one of the problems we had is we couldn't buy health insurance across state lines. So we need to take down those barriers and get competition. And
so you'd be in favor of scrapping it and looking for an alternative?
Well, absolutely. We need to look at I think there's a lot better alternatives than what we have. I don't know if we totally scrap it or if we modify it, but we have to do something because it's not working now, Tom.
Just about 30 seconds left. A quick foreign policy question. Congress may be asked to weigh in on the battle against ISIS. If a president were to come to you and you're a member of Congress, would you vote in favor of putting troops on the ground to fight that battle?
Unfortunately, right now, I think if you put troops on the ground, Tom, you're going to be fighting the Russians because they're supporting Assad. And our state policy has been that, you know, we've been fighting the fighters that are against Assad. You know, it's interesting about the Middle East. The reason we're involved over there is obviously to stabilize oil prices. We've done a really poor job of that. You know, oil prices went all the way up to $145 a barrel. Now the Middle East is in all turmoil, and you can see oil prices have fallen below $30 a barrel. We certainly need to make sure our security interests are intact, and if our security interests are being attacked, and absolutely, you know, we may need to go in, and we certainly need to take out ISIS.
So you would have to wait and see what the exact set of circumstances
Absolutely.
are. Okay. John Howe, he is a candidate, a Republican candidate, running for the endorsement to run against presumably Angie Craig, unless another Democratic candidate emerges to run. So best of luck to you on the campaign trail. I'm sure we'll run into you again.
Thanks, Tom. One more thing I was just going to add is being mayor is going to help me be a better senator, or help me be a better senator, and being senator is going to help me be a better congressman. And experience does matter. Thank you.
He is John Howe, running for 2nd District Congressional endorsement. We'll be back with our political analyst coming up in 2 minutes.